What does it mean when the Buddha is saying to Ananda, "Don't be careless, Ananda. Don't later fall into regret"? He says this so many times. Carelessness and carefulness are two opposite sides. They're leading in two different directions. Carefulness, or sometimes we can also call it heedfulness, this is one of the highest qualities. It leads all other qualities, and it is what makes qualities grow and kilesa go down. It goes with the quality of effort, but it's not only a pure physical effort. It really implies having a high moral standard in everything we do, attentiveness to not only our actions, but also our words, our thoughts as well. So this is carefulness, putting effort constantly, developing good qualities and removing bad qualities, removing kilesa. The opposite of this is carelessness, and there's a reason why the Buddha says this. Then he also talks about regret. Don't later fall into regret by being careless, because carelessness is really the best quality if you want to have regret. It leads directly to regret. Whenever we're careless, it means basically that we're doing something not necessarily really voluntarily, deliberately, with the intention of causing harm to others or harm to ourselves. It's possible for somebody to have, in general, quite good intentions or good aims of how to act, but being negligent in regard to them, being careless in regard to them, directly it causes regret, because we will later see the consequences. We will see how we destroyed our own good intentions with this carelessness. So just to explain more what that means, it's relatively easy to understand the consequences in material if we look at material examples of carelessness and how one moment even of carelessness or negligence can destroy even years of work. Ajahn often gives the example about a factory of cotton wads, the cotton pads, and somebody was smoking a cigarette near to them and was careless with his cigarette butt, the cigarette end, throwing it where it lit one of the cotton buds, and the whole factory goes up in flames. So you have the result of months of work going up in flames thanks to one moment of carelessness of one person. There was another nice example from a series about survival in the wilderness. They send a group of people alone to stay in the forest for several months by themselves. And at the end, the one who is able to stay the longest will win $500,000. And so in one of the series, there was one of the participants who was doing really well, who seemed to be directly on a course to win, who had food, he had a good shelter, he had a good place, like everything was going well. But then for just 1 minute, he had his fire lighting and he had turned around and was not looking after it properly. And there was a spark from the fire that went into the roof of his shelter, which was made of very dry pine needles. And he didn't notice it in time, so basically the whole shelter burned down with all his tools inside. And so of course he had to give up, he had to call to go back. So imagine losing your whole shelter that you had spent like weeks and weeks, even months building. Not only that, but losing $500,000 thanks to one moment of negligence, one moment of carelessness when you weren't watching, one spark. So for examples in material, we could go on and on. There are so many hundreds of times when things are lost, things are broken, things are damaged because of carelessness. Here it's relatively easy to see the damage it does, even if it might not be so easy to stop being careless. But in regard to immaterial things, carelessness in regard to one's practice of Dhamma in particular, we're talking here, it's even harder to grasp, it's trickier to catch, harder to see. It's carelessness with regard to developing good qualities and removing bad qualities. So it could translate to all sorts of different types of actions depending on each person, depending on their particular qualities or faults. But if we keep this in mind, that the general meaning of it is carelessness, negligence to work on good qualities, negligence to remove bad qualities and to prevent them from arising. This is what we have to watch out for. So it translates to any time we allow a kilesa to grow in our mind, whether desire, irritation, impatience, unhappiness, jealousy, or excitement, enjoyment of daily life, allowing these kilesa to grow in our mind and allowing ourselves to act on them even more is carelessness. It's also carelessness to neglect, to not take actions to prevent these things from growing in us, and to neglect to protect properly our good qualities. Meaning, for example, we should go and meditate right now to sharpen our mind. Our attention is beginning to drop, or we're starting to become tired, starting to become irritated. We're not practicing well right now at this moment. So this is the moment when, if we're not able to bring ourselves back right that moment, to drop whatever is inside and come back to just watching our mind, if we're not able to do that in the situation, we have to leave, go meditate for 5 minutes, and come back afterwards. But it's at that very moment when we're most likely to think that whatever we're doing is more important, or when we're likely to think that, oh, no problem, I will meditate later, or that we just don't even consider the possibility of going. It's at the very moment when we should be most attentive, most careful, watching and guarding our mind. When there is an object of desire, for example, or pleasure to be had, it's at that moment that we're least likely to be attentive. This is the danger of carelessness and the tricky nature of it. There is one story about a woman who became a nun in the time of the Buddha, and she had many qualities and was practicing very well. And in those times, it was permitted for the nuns to live alone in the forest in their kutis. And there, as is usual, it's possible that lay people would come to visit them to bring offerings. And one day it happened that an old friend, a cousin of hers, came to visit her, bringing offerings of food. And this young man offered to give her a foot massage. Probably her feet were tired from walking in meditation for so long. And so she agreed. And this was the beginning of the end of her practice. This was like the spark that burned the whole shelter of the man who was trying to stay alone in the wilderness. The two ended up getting married. She left the life of a nun, and they had 7 children. Happy ever after. But the Buddha later said that this woman would have had the qualities to become Arahant. If she had continued to practice, she would have become Arahant. So this is how one little spark of, what's one foot massage? No problem. How it can lead to such a big loss. And so this example demonstrates quite well too how even though you might have qualities that are extremely well developed, it's really not everybody that has the qualities to become Arahant. We have to work on them and work on them a lot in order to reach that point. But even so, there is no safety, there's no security. You can always fall back. And it's precisely because of the nature of carelessness that it becomes so easy to fall back. As in this example, it's at that very moment when this woman should have been most careful, most attentive, that the little curiosity or little desire takes place. And because of that, it's at that very moment when all these carelessa want to enter that you forget to watch, that you neglect to pay attention. It's as if at the very moment when a city is under attack, the watchman goes to drink a cup of tea. This is the nature of this carelessness, and this is why we have to develop such a strong, not only effort, but understanding and renunciation. Our effort has to be backed up by a very deep and strong morality and a very clear aim. And part of this understanding too is that no matter how hard you work, no matter how much you might see that you change or you see that you develop, it's never enough until you are at least sotapanna. Then at least you have some security that you won't lose your practice and you won't fall into a bad destination. Because part of the base of carelessness too is a kind of complacency or arrogance, thinking that we're working so well or thinking that we understand very well, my aim is clear, I don't need to be that careful. Oh yeah, no problem, my cousin can come in. Oh yeah, he can give me a foot massage. It would be impossible for me to fall in love with somebody I understand so well. So this kind of carelessness is what makes us lose our practice. On the other hand, carefulness is the element that ensures growth, that ensures progress in the practice. Constant heedfulness, constant effort, working on developing good qualities, removing bad qualities, working on protecting good qualities, not putting ourselves in a situation where we'll be in danger of allowing a kilesa to enter. The practice of Dhamma is the practice of constant carefulness, constant attentiveness, constant awareness, constant heedfulness. Ananda, don't be careless. Don't be heedless. Don't later fall into regret. This is my message to you all, the Buddha said. So let's listen to his message.